She fought from the first second he grabbed her. Meredith Emerson had been hiking along the quiet trail on Blood Mountain, the kind of path where the trees pressed close and the winter air carried every sound. She was fit, confident, and stubborn in the best way, and when a stranger stepped out from behind the brush and came toward her, she didn't freeze or fold. She swung her backpack like a shield and tried to break away. The struggle started hard and fast, echoing off the rocks as he tried to overpower her. She screamed for help, even though she already knew how empty the trail was that morning. The man who attacked her, Gary Hilton, had been watching hikers along the Appalachian Trail system for weeks. He picked people who were alone and seemed manageable. But Meredith didn't crumble under fear. She resisted so fiercely that Hilton later admitted he hadn't expected the fight she gave him. Her determination forced him to change his plan on the spot, turning what he intended to be a quick assault into a messy, prolonged kidnapping. He forced her down the ridge, keeping her off the main path. She stumbled over roots and frozen dirt as he pushed her ahead. The cold bit into her skin. She kept her voice steady, asking him what he wanted, trying to talk, trying to think through each option. She didn't beg. She worked. She looked for chances to run. She tried to memorize every detail of him. The closer he held her, the more she realized she was dealing with someone who had done this before. When Meredith's friends realized she hadn't returned home, panic spread fast. Her dog was missing too, which made everything feel worse. Within hours, local authorities, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and volunteers swarmed the mountain. Helicopters swept the ridgeline. Search teams combed miles of trails. Her bright red dog leash was found first, abandoned near a steep section of the path. It told investigators what they feared. She had been taken by force. While teams searched, Hilton kept Meredith moving between campsites and isolated clearings. He forced her to hand over bank cards and tried to get her PIN. She deliberately gave him the wrong numbers. When ATM cameras captured him failing to withdraw cash, investigators immediately knew the kidnapper was still alive, still traveling, and becoming more desperate. Meredith's resistance bought time, slowed him down, and forced errors that helped law enforcement close in. At a gas station, surveillance footage caught Hilton cleaning out his van. He tossed items into a dumpster, a bloodied sleeping bag, a day pack, and clothing. The footage traveled quickly through state agencies. Hilton's face and vehicle descriptions spread across Georgia and into nearby states. Tips started flooding in. People recognized the strange man who drifted around campgrounds, living out of his vehicle, approaching hikers with odd questions. Meredith continued to fight in every way she could. She asked him to spare her dog. She tried to keep him talking, hoping he'd make another mistake. And yet Hilton grew more erratic the longer he stayed on the run. He knew authorities were closing in. With pressure building, he killed Meredith somewhere in the North Georgia woods and abandoned her remains in a remote area. Investigators discovered the location only after Hilton finally broke under interrogation and led them to the site. The search effort on the mountain turned from rescue to recovery, and the tone across the entire state shifted with it. For days, hikers had hoped she'd be found alive, hiding somewhere off the trail. Instead, investigators were now cataloging evidence from Hilton's van, his campsite, and the wooded area where he left her. They found Meredith's belongings scattered through the vehicle and the trash he'd tried to discard. Every piece became part of a trail leading back through Hilton's past. When law enforcement dug deeper into his movements, an even darker picture formed. Hilton wasn't just a drifter who targeted Meredith on impulse. Investigators linked him to other unsolved disappearances stretching across state lines. One case stood out in particular, the death of Cheryl Dunlap in Florida, who had vanished while hiking in a forest the previous December. Evidence from Hilton's van and the pattern of his behavior connected him directly to her. In North Carolina, The disappearance of John and Irene Bryant also traced back to him. As investigators mapped his path through the southeast, they saw how often he had crossed into wilderness areas and how many times he'd approached hikers. Each case carried the same elements: isolated trails, vulnerable victims, and a killer who blended into the background until it was too late. Meredith's case broke the pattern. Her refusal to give him what he wanted cost him time, exposed him to cameras, forced him into public places, and pressured him into mistakes. Investigators later said her resistance likely prevented him from escaping across state lines again. Hilton lived in a cycle. He looked for people alone, waited for a moment of vulnerability, and struck when he believed no one would see or hear him. Meredith cracked that pattern open, and through her actions, law enforcement finally had enough to corner him. Hilton tried to keep moving, but the dragnet had already tightened. Patrol cars in multiple counties had his description. Rangers in state forests were on alert. When a deputy spotted the van at a roadside location, everything ended quickly. Hilton surrendered without a chase. He didn't fight the arrest. He could see that every state around him was already waiting. During interviews, he shifted between evasive answers and grudging admissions. Investigators pressed him repeatedly until he led them to Meredith's remains. The moment officers recovered her body, the mood in the command center shifted from grim uncertainty to controlled resolve. They now had proof, closure, and enough evidence to push for the maximum possible punishment. Hilton was charged with Meredith's murder and eventually admitted responsibility for the other victims. His confessions brought long-delayed answers to multiple families, ending years of questions that had hung over their loved ones' disappearances. He was sentenced to life without parole in Georgia and received additional sentences for the murders in Florida and North Carolina. In the years since Meredith's death, hikers on Blood Mountain still leave flowers and ribbons near the trail where she was taken. Her story is remembered not only for the horror of what happened, but for the strength she showed in the face of it. Investigators, family, and friends all said the same thing. She fought at every step, using every second she had. She created the breaks in the case that allowed authorities to stop Hilton before he found someone else. Her final hours were marked by fear, pain, and impossible choices, yet her resistance pushed back against a man who had taken lives before and fully intended to take more. The case became a reminder of how quickly danger can rise in a place that feels serene, how predators look for the quiet moments between footsteps, and how one person's determination can alter the outcome for others who might have crossed the same path. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.